Hello, today is Tuesday, 7th September, 10:04 a.m. Wow, so fast week 5 already, oh my gosh. How are you doing? I hope everything is going well so far. I know for many of you, many of myself included, the stress level is building up, right? Every week after week, suddenly more work, power up. And especially now you have tutorials. Wow, Zoom fatigue is a real thing, right? I know most of us still having 100% online, maybe one physical class or two physical class, but otherwise, almost all the other lessons are online, right? Zoom fatigue is a real thing. So I totally understand how tiring, how draining it can be. So that's why it's very important. Drink lots of water. Very important to stay hydrated. Very important to have a good rest. Take regular breaks. That's important because you still have so many semesters left to go before you graduate, right? So must take care. Anyway, this video is about doing a wrap up to pre-tutorial 1 and tutorial 1. Okay, now I will release a separate video with feedback on how to improve your discussion, how to improve your writing. Okay, I'll talk about some argumentative strategies in another video. Here, I just want to wrap up the learning points because when you all started doing pre-tutorial 1, what was the feeling like? Oh, what is going on? Oh my gosh, why everyone's so difficult? What am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to write? Why all the 4 measures also all impossible to answer? This is to give you a taste of how problematic proxy measures are. Because you see, the problem is this, we are subjected to proxy measures all around us all the time. And when we're subject to it, we don't think very much about it. What are the proxy measures that surround us? CAT. How many internship you do, how many CCA are you in Xcode, that kind of stuff, right? So for many of us, here's the problem. Whatever is used to measure us, okay, there's a certain feedback loop. If you remember lecture 4-4, politics of algorithms, the carrot, right? There's a certain feedback loop going on. So we are, in a certain sense, terrorized by the performance measures that are put on us. And it's very important for us to take a step back and just reflect. How accurate do these measures really mean? Is CAT really a good measure of my ability, of how good I am or how diligent I am, or how smart I am? You notice there's a limitation to how far all these measures can go, right? CAT says one thing, but people think that it can say more, right? It's when people think it can say more that it becomes a proxy measure, right? I mean, academic, okay, fine, right? If you want to say, oh, this person can think very hard or think very well or work very hard, then we're making interpretive leaps, right? We're jumping across the chasm, right? Now, don't forget, proxy measure. You have data, you have interpretation. Now, in between, what do you have? A gap. And what do you fill the gap? With your assumptions. That's the problem. Now, so to help you appreciate how problematic proxy measures are, that's why we have pre-tutorial 1. So then you look at every measure and then you realize, hey, this measure is problematic, this measure is problematic, this measure is problematic. Then how? So the aim when we use proxy measures is to go for the least problematic one. But how do we know what's the least problematic one? Oh, well, I don't know, you don't know, right? So so we have to do some analysis, we do have to do some thinking about it, but I'll talk about that in a separate video. The key thing is this. Now that you experience for yourself how imperfect proxy measures are, then you start to become more sensitive, more aware of the problems of the proxy measures around us, of the kinds of proxy measures that's used to measure us and what we use to measure other people. That is the key thing, right? So, of course, then we come to the spy tutorial. Don't you, quite memorable, right? Quite fun, right? Who's the spy? Am I a spy? Are you a spy? Who's the spy? Got spy, man? You know which spy is my favorite name? I spy with my little eye. Yes, I came up with those names. Yeah, anyway, but you see, there's a difference. Like most of us, we came up with the first pivot table is what? One side we got names, the other side we got the status, down and functional, and then we got all the numbers, right? Now, there's a difference between direct measure and proxy measure. Direct measure, a question we require a direct measure is, if I ask you, which engineer worked the shift with the most number of downs? This question, I can just look at the pivot table, 55, is that person, right? Am I a spy, right? Now, that's a direct measure. But if I start to ask questions like, oh, who's the most incompetent engineer? Or who's the spy? You notice, these kinds of questions, the data cannot answer. We need to start interpreting the numbers, reading the numbers to see what those numbers could mean. So that is where the problem begins, because that's when we start to project our own prejudices, our own thoughts and views about people in the world onto the data. And that can be very, very problematic. Now, of course, you all are wondering, like, who's the spy? Come, I tell you, you know who's the spy? Well, it turns out the data set is randomly generated. Now, of course, you'll be like, walao, why you send me on this lame chase, you know, you do all this, then now you tell me the data is randomly generated. I tell you what's the key learning point. Isn't it scary? I can give you a randomly generated data set, and all of you can cook up so many stories. Oh, I think this person is a spy, I think that person is a spy. Oh, this person very sus, that person very sus. Scary, right? This is what our brain does with numbers. We need to be aware of that. So I can give you any data set, real data set, fake data set, and there is a temptation to see patterns, to read things where they don't exist. So let that be a learning point. Especially when you look at numbers, it's very easy to cook up a lot of stories. So that's then of course the question is this: if I can cook up a lot of stories, then how now brown cow? So the key is this: that is why we emphasize what is the assumption. You know, when your TA will ask you, right? Okay, so you say this person is a spy. What was the assumption that led you to say this person is a spy? Pay attention to the assumption. Is this assumption reasonable or not reasonable? Of course, some groups will say, okay, I got these two assumptions, they seem equal strength, right? Yeah. I don't have reason to demolish any of these two assumptions. So it could be this person is a spy or that person is a spy. Then how? So that's when we start to bring in lecture 3, right? You know, all the negative justification, positive justification, right? So can we apply negative justification to demolish one of them? Okay, let's say we can't. These are the two remaining ones, right? Then there's what we call corroboration of evidence. Can we find other pivot tables where the data points to the same person? If we can build up, right? So that is how we build a case. Yeah. Now think of it this way. Let's say murder scene. We found a knife with your fingerprint on it. Is that sufficient evidence to prove that you are the murderer? No, right? Because it could be your knife, right? So that's why your fingerprints are on it, right? So one evidence is never enough. So we need to look for other supporting evidence. For example, if I have a CCTV that shows you stabbing, okay, then we build up the case, right? Why is the CCTV? You could say, oh, but CCTV is enough, right? What if the CCTV is just showing the back? So it could be a lookalike. Maybe you're being framed, right? So you notice what's going on. Every time you find positive evidence, there is always a couple of alternative explanations. So we want to corroborate, we want to build up other sources of evidence because we want to get rid of all those alternative explanations. That is the key. Now, I will say, even though the data set is randomly generated, I kind of massage the data such that it is possible to build up a case for one particular spy. Of course, who's the spy? I made the data set so many semesters ago, I forgot already. you go and play lah, go and play with the pivot table, you go and find the one that is the spy, there are 4 or 5 pivot tables that you can build and you point to the same person. Okay. If you find the spy, you come, you contact me. I look at your data. Then if I'm convinced, I'll give you a GET t-shirt. Okay. Okay. Now, so that is the key. So tutorial 1, tutorial 1 is all about proxy measures. And then now that we move into pre-tutorial 2 and tutorial 2, which you are doing this 2 weeks, right? We are learning how to apply proxy measures in our classification models. That is the idea. Now, okay, I will end with this thing, because in my tutorials, I like to play violin for my students before we start the class. Now, I'm only teaching 3 classes this semester, so I don't get to see many of you. So, here is my way of sharing the joy of music with you, okay? So, enjoy this piece!